Trojan fans, welcome to another edition of the Peristyle Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, joined in studio by Mr. Triple Double himself, Connor Morrissette. What's up, Connor? How you doing, man?
Doing well, Ryan. Good to be with you as always.
We're going to talk some USC football today. A lot to get to, a lot of news that came out of practice and what Lincoln Riley had to say the last couple of days. Of course, a look back at another heartbreaking loss, USC falling in overtime to Penn State, and then a desperate win needed on the road against Maryland in the Chris Trevino Bowl this weekend. So we'll get to all that stuff. If you have any questions or comments for the show, you can email us, podcast@uscfootball.com, or you could call or text us. That's another way to get a hold of us. 424-254-9141. Went to like a little brain fart mode there for a second. I don't know. I've said that like a million times. I'm not sure what was going on there. The Apple Podcasting app, it's a great place to follow us, the Peristyle Podcast. You can do that. Leave us a 5-star review, and if you do, we can read them on the air. We have a new one for you today we can get to in a second. But yeah, if you have that one, or Spotify, you can leave us a 5-star rating as well. We appreciate that. The review isn't really about the show, Connor. It's sort of a referendum on USC football, and you might have not have heard this before, but there's some people that aren't happy with the state of the Trojan football team. But this is from, it's from For Emmett. He left a 5-star review. Keep your, quote, genius coach. I don't know if the Indiana coach, very few, if any, 4- and 5-star recruits, or if the Washington coach are geniuses. Washington's been struggling a little bit, and Indiana's great. Kirk Cignetti's awesome. He comes over from James Madison, so he's doing a great job over there. They're 6-0 right now. He says, but I much prefer a good coach to a genius. No one at USC cares about Lincoln Riley's record in high school. He doesn't have one. Or Oklahoma following Stoops. It matters nothing. 2.5 years of Clay Helton-like results. Helton was horrible, but Riley is in the conversation. He's not smart. I wouldn't want him in a rowboat with me. I doubt he's smart enough to assemble all but the most simple IKEA furniture. I mean, it's not really easy.
Wow, this guy's mad.
Yeah. Genius? He's much closer to an idiot than he is to a genius. Einstein was a genius. So he's, again...
I mean, the guy's a genius. Sometimes can he be guilty of having a my way or the highway attitude, Riley? Yeah, but if you don't think he's a smart offensive coach, then I don't really know what to tell you. But I get it. People are frustrated, and that makes a whole lot of sense after another difficult loss. So I get the sentiment of the email, but I don't think I agree with the contents. But Riley, hey, I mean, he's definitely at fault here for being 3-3. The buck stops with him, and that's what he said after that Penn State defeat.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. Wanted to thank our sponsor before we get into all of the content, because we've got a lot to get to. Trader Joe's. I'm going over there after the show, Connor, even though I'm going out of town tomorrow morning, going to the Maryland game. But yes, love going over to Trader Joe's, try to find my favorites, try to find some new things. I'm going to be making a little fish ceviche, and so I got to pick up my citrus and the jalapenos over there are really good. I'm better. I don't know if you're an avocado guy.
Oh yeah.
I like the avocado. I think I've used it right for the first time last week, but finding the ones that, just a little mushy, like not mushy, but a little soft.
Yeah.
So they're ripe, because I think I bought some before and they were just like not ripe yet. So I don't know. I like cooking. I just haven't done a lot with avocado. So last time I got at Trader Joe's, worked out great. So I'm going to get some more and stuff over there. But I like I put some red onions in there. Pick those up at Trader Joe's, and I'm going to put some cucumbers this time. They have the little cucumbers, which I like, over at Trader Joe's. So dice up some cucumbers, put them in there with the red onion and everything. Should be good. But you need the citrus. That's how you basically like cook the fish for ceviche. But I'm heading over there afterwards, so I'll probably pick up some favorites and stuff too. I'm not doing sweets right now for my challenge, so it's a little tough. So I got to get some regular stuff, some good food, which is better, right?
Yeah. The avocados, when those are ripe, though, that makes a big difference.
Right. I don't know. I just never cooked with them very much. So I'm trying to do that now. Should be pretty good. Let's see. We are live on the YouTube channel, and hopefully everyone can hear us okay if you have any problems in that. But we're live over at Inside Troy. If you're watching live and you have a question or concern or just a funny comment, you can put that up there, and I will bring it up on the screen. I see you got some comments coming in, and so I'll kind of look for them as I'm talking, or probably mostly when Connor's talking, and then we'll try to get to your comments and questions and stuff in the chat. We got voicemails and everything to get to too, and all that. I want to let everyone know. So if you're traveling or you happen to live in the DMV area or somewhere that you're just going to the game, we will have a meetup over at, it's called Tom's Watch Bar, and it's in National Harbor, so DC, 6:30 Eastern time on Friday. So I'll be picking Connor up from the airport, and maybe we'll go right over there, but we should be there by 6:30. Tom's Watch Bar. It's got a big, Chris was giving me some ideas because Chris Trevino's from the area, went to Maryland and all that. So we will meet up Friday night at Tom's Watch Bar, National Harbor. I guess there's a couple locations. So National Harbor, come check it out. It's free. Everyone just have your own tab. Just meet up, have some drinks and stuff. Things have been a lot of fun, and this is the last sort of like East Coast trip of the season. So we'll do some kind of meet up in Seattle for the next road trip, and nothing for UCLA since that's at the Rose Bowl. But so it should be a lot of fun.
Looking forward to it. I've had a blast at the last few, and this one should be great as well. It'll be fun to be in Chris's old stomping grounds too. So the fact that he recommended it, I think, makes me very confident that it'll be a great spot, and it'll be fun to be hanging with Chris at his alma mater.
Yeah, we had a comment in the chat. Mark says, can you have Chris wear a sombrero on Friday so everyone knows it's the Trevino Bowl? I think everybody knows. He knows. If you listen to the Cilantro Boys podcast, that was a big theme. Chris going home. Going to Maryland football games as a kid was what made him a sports fan. So, like, why he's in this industry is today, just from growing up in the area, he went to Maryland football, which at the time, I think Maryland basketball was probably a lot bigger. But for whatever reason, that was his thing.
I'm excited to be hanging with him. I actually went to Maryland when I was looking at schools and had a great time. Didn't end up going there, but it'll be nice to be back. I've only been there once. Don't really have too many memories of it. Very quickly there with my dad. We did a whole East Coast swing, so I'm looking forward to being back there.
Yeah, me too. I'm just checking my headphones and stuff here. Okay, so a bunch of different things we want to get to. Thanks again to Trader Joe's. Hopefully you can go to the meetup. We put information up on the Peristyle over at uscfootball.com if you want to. And I tweeted it out, so I pinned it to my Twitter account. So if you go to my Twitter account, Inside Troy, you can see the information there. We do have a little bit of breaking news, and not the good kind. Couple players are going to be out for the season, Connor, and maybe talk about what you learned.
Yeah, yesterday asked Lincoln Riley, hey, we didn't see Anthony Lucas come out to practice. I know he hurt his ankle at the end of that Penn State game. Do you expect to have him for Saturday? And I thought Riley would just say either, he's questionable or he'll be out for a few weeks. But instead, Anthony Lucas is out for the season, Riley said, which is a big blow. He didn't have a sack or a tackle for loss, which on paper doesn't really look good, but he was USC's best edge rusher by a mile, led the team in pressures, led the team in quarterback hits. A few instances he had where he was so close to making a big play, he almost knocked the ball out of Max Brosmer's hand against Minnesota, the Minnesota quarterback. So, again, the production maybe doesn't look great on paper, but he's a huge loss for USC because he was the team's best edge rusher. And then Eric Gentry, who we knew was going to be out for the season. That was officially confirmed by Gentry. He tweeted out that he is taking a red shirt because he suffered a series of concussions, and clearly with those, if you get one too many, that could end your career, never mind end the season. So I expect him to be back next season, and he was playing so well for USC. I know he's a linebacker, but he was a really good edge rusher too for USC, and now you have two of your best pass rushers out for the year. It's an area, that defensive line, where the depth was already a little bit questionable heading into the season, down their two best players. Very, very tough blow for the Trojans.
It is a very tough blow. Two of the most important pieces on the USC defense, and we haven't seen the production from the defensive line. None of the starters getting a sack, but he was someone that would be, Anthony Lucas would be someone that was very active, very disruptive. I think the LSU game might have been his best one. I mean, some of the scouts that were looking at the game were just really impressed with what Anthony Lucas was able to do. And of course, Eric Gentry, was leading the nation in tackles for loss. He's still the number one USC guy. Like, I don't know who's going to pass him anytime soon. He hasn't played the last couple of games. But two big blows. We kind of expected the Eric Gentry one. I know you were a little surprised about the Anthony Lucas one.
Yeah, I asked Riley about Lucas's status. Like I said, when he said he was out, I was like, huh? Like, no one expected that. So, tough blow for him. And I rewatched the game on Monday. It came on that questionable roughing the passer call he had. It's funny. How come USC is getting these penalties and then their guys are getting hurt? Like Kamari Ramsey for that illegal block. He's hurt. Yeah. He gets called for a penalty. And then Anthony Lucas twists his ankle, brushes the quarterback. I think on that one, the official just had a bad view, and maybe it looked like he hit Drew Aller low because in no world should that have been a roughing the passer call. But anyway, he got hurt on that play, and that ended his season, unfortunately. So Riley said it was a leg injury. It looked like his ankle on that play. I won't speculate too much, but he had surgery on it, or a procedure, Riley said. So sounded like surgery, and yeah, he's out for the year. Big loss.
Yeah, big loss there on the injury front. USC's been pretty good as far as injuries go. Halfway through the season, getting a little banged up here, so we'll see kind of where they go from there. We did have a comment. Tanner, what about day of the game? I'm traveling up that morning. Sorry, Tanner. So if you've followed along, we do a Friday night meetup, and that's it. So if you can, people are always like, hey, I'm coming up that day. I'm like, well, sorry, then you're not going to go to the meetup. So come up a day early if you want to go to the meetup. That's what we do. There's other people that are doing tailgates and things like that, but we do our Friday night meetups, and that's how we roll. Okay, let's see. One of the, I don't know if this is important or not. I was a little surprised. I was watching Trojans live on Monday with Lincoln Riley, and he brought up that their travel, I think he was asked about the travel schedule, because it's been something that fans have talked about a bunch, and it's been critical that USC's leaving on these Friday games. Apparently, Ohio State left on Friday to go to Eugene. Penn State left on Thursday. They bussed to Harrisburg and then flew to LA. UCLA's been going on Fridays. And the teams that have, I don't know what the overall record is now, but traveling 2 or more time zones to update it. But both Minnesota won at UCLA, and then Penn State won at USC. And then before, Indiana won at UCLA. So the only times people have traveled 2 time zones and won have been if they've come to Los Angeles. It's a fairly easy place to get to. There's, major airport and all that kind of stuff. But no one going east has won, going over 2 time zones. So none of them knew, and we'll see. Oregon's going to Purdue this weekend, so they'll probably win that game. But so the travel thing has been kind of talked about a lot, and it's still, the teams don't have great records traveling multiple time zones. And when Lincoln Riley said they were going to change up the travel this week because it's the longer trip, I thought, okay, well, they're going to leave on Thursday. And he actually said they're going to leave a little bit later, do something on campus, a walkthrough or whatever they're going to do, and then go to the airport and fly out. So I don't know if it's a big deal or not. What did you think about that? I just was a little surprised they were going to leave even later than what they normally would.
Yeah, well, I'm in charge of the Trojans Live takeaways, and I'll usually tweet out anything that's really interesting before I get my article up. And Riley had said a few things, but nothing that really caught my attention. And then he says, yeah, we're going to change our travel schedule. Obviously, that's been a huge talking point this season, so I kind of perked up a little bit. And then I agree with you, Ryan, when he said we were going to leave later. I was like, really? Right when all these USC fans have been complaining about how USC hasn't been leaving early enough, they're going to do the opposite. I don't have a huge problem with it. I trust Lincoln Riley and them to have done their homework, and that whole staff. They talk to NFL teams, and it's not really a huge issue with me. And it sounded like, based on what Riley said, getting the feedback from players and from some of the staff that leaving later would be better for them. So it's not like Riley just said, we're going to do this because I wanted to. He was listening to people. And I do think, I've read some things too, Ryan. It seems like that is becoming more and more of the best case scenario for teams, like get in and get out. And teams do that with their London trips in the NFL. I think that's becoming more of a trend, where the old guard and doing it the old way was you get in, you adjust, you're there for longer. But now it seems like the newer way of thinking, and what NFL teams have done, you want to spend as little time as possible at this new place. And I remember a couple years ago, the Patriots went down to Miami early to try to get in the right frame of mind, and then they ended up getting killed. So I don't know if it's possible to measure, like, oh, well, if you do this, then this will have a better effect. Like, eventually you just got to play the game, and the travel is the travel, no matter, if you leave a day early or not. So to me, Riley said it all along. I don't know how much the travel really affects our ability to win. That's sort of how I feel. But hey, if they keep losing these games when they're traveling and they keep leaving later, maybe we'll have to eventually start talking about maybe they shouldn't be leaving later.
Yeah, I think that you're right. The trend there, I mean, there's different studies and they've tried different things. I know it's difficult, and I think the NFL has shown that it's harder to go east than it is to come west.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a disadvantage there for the West Coast teams that you're just, I don't know, there's not much you can really do. But it does seem like some teams do want to get the in and out. For like these guys are college guys, like, I mean, it's Washington, D.C. Like, you could go Thursday and Friday, like, do a walkthrough and tour some museums or something. Like, it just seems like there's an opportunity there, and you could still make it a business trip. But so I don't know. But I think he's talked to a lot of people. It's not like they're doing this in a vacuum. And like I'd mentioned before, this isn't a budgetary thing. It's literally trying to get the best, trying to get the best results. And you can look at some studies that show, hey, it's better to leave early, but there's more trendy ones now that are saying leave later. So I just was a little shocked. I thought if you were going to move it, it would be moved earlier, I guess. But
yeah, that's how I thought too. So that was a surprise. You know what can shut up everyone about all this travel? Go out and win by 20 points against the Maryland team that might not win another game this season. Have you looked at their schedule? It is brutal the rest of the way. So don't be that last team that Maryland beats. This is a big game for USC. It's a huge spot for them mentally after being 3-3 and clearly not where they want to be. It's a tough road trip. USC hasn't won on the road this season, as we all know. A lot of people won't buy back in after beating Maryland, of course, but you can lose a lot of people, even more people, if you don't get the job done this week. So I think it's a big week in that regard. Some tough injury news, obviously the tough loss last week. Like, you got to go out and show people, like, what Lincoln Riley talks about, being 1 or 2 plays away. You really were 1 or 2 plays away against some of those good teams, and that's going to carry through here and will lead to a big win against Maryland. Maryland is not as good as Minnesota, in my opinion.
No.
This is a team that USC really should beat. And it is unfortunate. It reminds me of the Arizona State spot last year where Arizona State played like crap against Fresno State, turned the ball over 8 times, and then USC came in the next week, and it was like, oh, this team stinks. And Arizona State got up for it a little bit more.
Yes.
Maryland got crushed last week against Northwestern, lost the turnover battle 4-0, kind of collapsed in the fourth quarter. They had 3 fourth-quarter turnovers. It just got really ugly. And if I'm a USC fan, I'm thinking, why can't we get that ugly performance? Because it always seems like it's the week before. Like Michigan this year, they got the really ugly performance against Arkansas State, and Texas the week before that. And then they switch quarterbacks. And this year, it's Maryland getting the ugly performance out before they play USC. It's an unfortunate break. Regardless of that fact, I do think last year's Arizona State team was better than this Maryland team. This Maryland team, they have some good receivers. They have a good defensive lineman in the middle. Their quarterback is sort of average, but they're just not that talented. And USC really should get the job done, even though they'll be undermanned.
Yeah, bouncing back from the loss to Penn State, what does USC have in the tank for another cross-country trip?
Yeah.
Maryland is another desperate team, just like Minnesota was. Minnesota hadn't won I think 6 straight Big Ten losses. Maryland hasn't won a Big Ten game yet. USC hasn't won a Big Ten road game yet. And to be an 11-point favorite at home against a pretty bad-looking Northwestern team, and Northwestern comes in there and just crushes them from the start. Crazy. Maryland's offensive line hasn't been very good.
Yep.
USC's defensive line hasn't been very good. We'll see what kind of matchup that produces there. But I was watching the game, and it was like supposed to be a blackout, but there was hardly any people in the stands. It just seemed like Maryland didn't even show up. But do they turn on a switch? It's like, hey, well, this isn't Northwestern. This is USC. It's going to make a big difference. Crazy uniforms from Under Armour, whatever it is going to be, you feel like you're going to get Maryland's best shot. But I think what you said to start is the most important thing. Is I think in the offseason, there wasn't as much talk because it was more like they didn't add the top players. It was more about, hey, the staff, infrastructure, getting bigger, stronger, and just like, let's go out in the field and let our play do the talking. And it did against LSU. You get in the season, there's going to be talk. There's just a lot of talk going on of what's going. Now there's expectations and everything. I feel like you get to get back to just go out there and play, beat the crap out of somebody you should beat the crap out of, and move on and sort of try to build on that because they can make a run here in the second half, but it starts with you got to get your first Big Ten road win and just win a game convincingly. Don't let it come down to the end where a ref can make a call or something like that.
Totally agree with you there. I feel the exact same way. The schedule does soften, but people won't want to hear that. And I listened to Tunnel Vision with you, Shotgun, and Jack, and Shotgun was making the point that USC is getting better, and we hear Lincoln Riley make the point we're close, and both of those things are true. But I think the frustrating thing, Ryan, after the LSU game, look, I didn't think USC was going to beat LSU, and that game really opened my eyes. But if you go back and look at that game, the issues that the team they're dealing with right now, the biggest issues, the lack of a pass rush. USC didn't do much pass rushing against Garrett Nussmeier, and Miller Moss was under pressure on 38% of his dropbacks, which is the second highest total of the year. Like, the issues that you don't want to have in the Big Ten, offensive line, defensive line, they were still there against LSU, and the team still got the job done, and everything really went right, and you thought, okay, USC, they have a chance here. But there were still issues that you don't want to have as a Big Ten team, and now being 1-3 in conference, and the line of scrimmage has been a huge part of why USC has been close but hasn't won these games. I think that gave people a false sense of security, and that's why now against Maryland, they're a team that really shouldn't challenge you in the trenches. USC isn't great in the trenches. Maryland's offensive line isn't great. USC, this defensive line, even though it's undermanned, you got to get a couple sacks this week because this is probably the worst offensive line you're going to face the rest of the way. Defensively for Maryland, yes, they have some guys who can do some things, but they don't have any clear, okay, that's Abdul Carter, we need to game plan for him, he's a first-round pick. They don't have anyone like that. So the offensive line for USC, which has been getting better, they need to win their matchup here as well. And this can be a stepping stone game where, yes, it hasn't gone according to plan this season. USC's 3-3, but can they get the trench play down in this game against an undermanned opponent, give some people some confidence going forward? That's really what I'm looking at.
I am too. You need to get some confidence there and just sort of assert yourself in the trenches. Play well on the road. Just get away. Just go win. Like, there's no more. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about you're being close. Just go out and blow a team out that you should blow out. Like, that's how you solve. Like, what is he saying at the press conferences? And what is, I don't like this question. Or just go out and just blow a team out. And then it does. None of that stuff will matter after that. Fat Bank. Which team is more desperate, us or them? Hard to say.
I mean, if I had, which team is closer to totally giving up? To me, it's Maryland.
Yes.
I don't think, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat today. I don't think either team will give up, of course, but, Maryland is just not that good. They have, like I said, they have the receivers, but their quarterback is okay. They can't run the ball. Their offensive line isn't great. Mike Locksley, it kind of seems like it's getting a little bit stale with him.
Yeah.
If there was a team that is going to give up, I look more at Maryland than USC, but Maryland is at home, and USC, they've been wildly disappointing after beating LSU, so I'm not accusing anyone of giving up, but I just feel like I don't look at it as who's more desperate. I think both teams are desperate. I look at it as which team is more likely to have the bottom fall out, and to me that's a Maryland team that just doesn't have that much talent. And looking at this schedule for them the rest of the way, so it's USC, then it's at Minnesota, which we know is a house of horrors, at Oregon, good luck in that game, home against Rutgers, probably the last game they have a chance to win. Home against Iowa, not a good matchup for them.
Yeah.
And then at Penn State. So it just does not get any easier for them. Maybe Mike Locksley talks it up like, hey, new season, 1-0 mentality like we've heard with USC. Lincoln Riley talked about it. But, if you're a player on Maryland, you look at that schedule, it's like, man, I don't know how many games we have a chance to win coming up. And, USC, it's just totally different. So I don't look at it as more desperation. I look at it sort of differently, like who might really just end up having a stinker this year. And to me, it has to be Maryland because USC's too good to just have a total stinker.
They could. We've seen them, but you can't let that happen. You're Lincoln Riley. You can't let that happen. Eddie, I'm not going to agree with you, Eddie. He's season is over. Start my Ava. I would disagree with both of those.
To change a quarterback, the quarterback has to not have you in a position to win. And every single one of USC's losses, yes, Moss has had his faults, but you have to be – the quarterback has to be killing you to make a change. Yeah. And I don't think Moss has been killing them. Has he had some turnovers that have negatively impacted winning? Of course. And that one against Penn State comes to mind. You execute there, you have a chance to kick a walk-off field goal. But, I've always gone back to the Caleb Williams, Spencer Rattler example. Oklahoma was getting killed against Texas, and Rattler was doing nothing. Has USC been close to getting blown out here in any of these games. Yes, they were down 14-3 on the road against Michigan, but that's really as close as it's gotten. And I totally understand why people might want a quarterback change. Moss has not been perfect, but to make one, first of all, I think Moss has been playing better than a lot of people think, but I understand the turnovers have been a problem. To make a quarterback change, the quarterback needs to be playing just absolutely horribly, and his floor is too high to be doing that. Unless there's an injury or he really has a true stinker, a no touchdown pass, 3 interception performance, then you can think about making a change. But USC's been so close in all these games. It's not just the quarterback that is why they're losing. Get off the field on 4th down against Penn State. Block better against Michigan. Block better against Minnesota. Moss is at fault too, but the people who are saying he's the reason we're 3-3 and it's on him alone, those people are out to lunch.
Yeah.
I totally disagree with that. And Lincoln Riley, in my opinion, is correct to keep backing Moss. I think you might lose the locker room, too, if you make a change at this point. Those guys love Moss. It just doesn't make any sense. As someone who's there on the ground every day, Tuesday, Wednesday, covering practice, talking to people, I think a change could do a lot more harm than good right now. Now, if Moss goes out and plays terribly and a change is warranted, fine. But a change is not warranted right now, and it bothers me that so many people feel that way. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It just seems like this, it's like the low-hanging fruit, like, I'll change the quarterback because that's the biggest problem. It's like, no, like, what did the Jets go out and do? They fired Robert Saleh, right? Like, their defense was great. It was the offense that was bad, and you fire the head coach that was what he was doing was well. But you're making change for the sake of making a change. And I think a lot of fans are upset. They just want to make a change. If the season was over and like you wanted to groom the young guy or something, but the season isn't over, that's also incorrect. I mean, you still, first of all, just having UCLA and Notre Dame on your schedule means something. They're mathematically not eliminated from the playoffs, especially looking at their first win against LSU. It's like a top 10 team now. They're 5-1. The only loss is to USC. So they have more opportunities to get good wins. I mean, Nebraska could be ranked when they play. Notre Dame, UCLA is terrible, but there's still a lot to play for in this season. So I think you got to get things right. I'm sorry if you don't agree that some people just want literally. So here's Justin. I'll let them argue Maeva for this game, but not for Penn State. He got sacked once. There was not a lot of pressure on Moss in that game, even though. But people want, just because, I mean, I feel like a lot of people don't know anything about Maeva except that he's more mobile. And they saw him have that touchdown run against Utah State, which was cool. But it's sort of like you have your significant other, and she's like she's a great cook, and she's a good mom to your kids, and she's smart and has an awesome job and all this stuff. But you're like, I really love like fresh bread in the morning. She says that's not good at making bread. It's like, you know what? That girl over there is really good at making bread. I'm going to go out with her. Like, forget all the other cool things about your significant other. You're just only looking at, if that's all you want is someone that can move, you could put Zachariah Branch at quarterback. Like, it doesn't freaking matter, So I don't understand. Like, watch what Maeva did at UNLV. I think there was a pretty wide variance. I mean, he was great for a freshman, but there was a lot of turnovers. There was a lot of mistakes. So you only want him because he's more mobile and none of the other things that matter about being a quarterback? Not that he's not those things, but Miller Moss is better at most of those. So that's what's just kind of baffling to me, Connor.
I'm with you as well. With you totally. In their loss to Boise State last year, Maeva didn't throw a touchdown, had 2 picks. Like, we can poke holes in everything. Moss has not had a single game that comes close to something like that. So, again, that was last year, and Maeva's probably made a lot of strides. It just, to me, it's not the right time to make that change. And I'll go back to what I said last week. Can we let Lincoln Riley evaluate the quarterback and make the best decision for his team? The guy who, I don't know, had 5 freaking starters in the NFL last week.
I think he knows quarterbacks.
Yeah, all 5 guys who it's not like, oh, there's a 6th guy who stinks. All 5 guys who have played quarterback under him started in the NFL last week. I don't understand why people are like, oh, well, in Riley's system, you need a runner. Like, Riley knows what he needs in his system. He's the one who invented the damn system. Like, give me a break with that. All the armchair analysts who are like, oh, I know more about quarterbacks than Riley, and the reason that USC isn't winning is because of their quarterback, and they need to bring in the backup. Do you think if Riley really felt that way? I don't know. The guy who has had all this success with quarterbacks.
Serb is saying that. Obviously, the offensive line at USC is not it, but Miller doesn't fit his scheme. It's exactly the opposite of what Connor knows. Like, Lincoln Riley knows his scheme.
Yeah,
he's picked him.
He doesn't fit Lincoln Riley's scheme. Like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Yes, I mean, a running quarterback would help. But like to say 1,000% this guy is wrong for the scheme because he's not as mobile. The scheme can adapt. Lincoln Riley can change. Like it makes no sense to me. Let's let the guy who has done so well at the quarterback spot historically evaluate and make the decision on the quarterback, and just trust him. If you can't trust him with that, then I don't know what you can trust him with at all.
Justin, some of the fan base wants Mailata to start against these elite teams already, which is questionable to me. Moss has so much more experience in Lincoln's offense. Yeah, his first 2 starts were against ranked teams and he won. So, like, I don't know, like, Mailata hasn't done that. I mean. And
Moss has only started 7 games, too. He's older. He has more experience in the system, but he was always going to have some growing pains. Like, Caleb Williams went 7-5 last season, and he was the number 1 pick. Like, it's not just the quarterback, especially on this year's team. When USC against Penn State had 2 opportunities on defense, 4th and 10, 4th and 7. On one of those plays, they had Allard dead to rights. You get a stop, you win the game, and Moss isn't even in that position. Would you have liked him to complete that pass to Robinson and they kick a field goal? Yes, and he's at fault. I'm not saying he's not. But before that, if your defense bails you out, you win that game. It's not all on one individual player, even though the quarterback is the most important position in football, of course. That's not all on him.
No.
And overall, I mean, the turnovers at the end of games, yes, that's not good. The pressure that he's faced, the hits that he's taken, I think he's played pretty well.
Marshall, I hate this take. I have to put it up there, though. No way this team beats Notre Dame. Moss will be under duress all game, and it'll be a repeat of our recent losses. All right, so much wrong with what you only said so many words, but most of them are wrong. Penn State's better at creating pressure than Notre Dame is, and Penn State didn't get a lot of pressure on USC. That was a lot of scheme and just getting rid of the ball faster, and I think the offensive line played better. But when you have to have a short memory to say there's no way this team beats Notre Dame. Where Notre Dame lost at home to Northern Illinois, like they went on the road and beat Texas A&M. That's a good loss. USC beat LSU. Like LSU is probably going to be favored against Notre Dame if they play tomorrow. To say there's no way, I just don't think maybe you don't watch college football at all because there's definitely a way, and USC might be favored in that game depending on what goes on there. So I hate these takes. They're just sort of like, oh, USC lost the game. They're going to lose to everybody. They're never going to score a point again. It's like, come on, dude. Like that's just absolutely insane.
I'm with you. I don't understand the quarterback stuff. Like, let's get mad at Danton Lynn maybe for allowing 17 catches for 200 whatever yards and a touchdown with a tight. Like, hey, maybe someone ought to get on that guy. Maybe you don't want him running wide open all the time. To like, if we're talking about the biggest, most glaring issues in a particular game, I start there.
Yeah,
and the quarterback to
Moss
me
was not the biggest glaring.
Is lower on the list. And to your point, Miller Moss was under pressure on 28% of his dropbacks against Penn State. Against LSU, it was 38%. Against Michigan, it was like 43%. The offensive line, as much grief as I've given them, they've played better, and Moss was under pressure less in this game. So all the people who are saying the sky is falling, he's under pressure all the time, he's under less pressure every week. Against Minnesota, it was down to like 23%. And his pocket mobility is awesome. I think that's one of his best traits. And people on our board, pocket mobility, what are you talking about? The guy moves around so well in the pocket. Remember that 3rd and long throw to Deuce Robinson where he gained 25 yards? It was like 3rd and 10 or something. He stepped up, he threw that dart. It set up the Kyron Hudson touchdown. Like, if you think his pocket mobility is bad, then you're just not watching the same games. I'm going to say something, Ryan, that you might not like, but like the USC fan base this year, I question the intelligence of some of these people, whereas last year I didn't. This year, like, this is my second year doing this with you. Like, some people trying to diagnose the problems and like their opinions. I can't get there with some of these people. I don't understand.
No, it's yes, and
maybe that's just all fans, but like I don't remember last year being like, okay, there's so many takes that I don't agree with. Like the Moss one comes to mind for me. The Lincoln Riley can't coach one comes to mind to me. I have way more issues with him as a general manager than him as a coach. I don't watch these games and I say, oh, they're not well coached. I don't see that at all. You have to be in these games. You have to be well coached, and those are two that come to mind. I'll think of some other ones. So I don't know. Just a lot of the talk this season I think has been so off base. Like they're 3-3, and half the group thinks they're 3-3 because of this, and to me it's like, no, they're 3-3 because of these other things, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I keep saying that.
No, it's true, and I get it, but the USC fans have a reason to be upset.
Yes.
USC shouldn't be 3-3.
Oh, totally, totally right.
I think people get on the boards and they'll be like complaining about something or whatever. It's like, and I'm like, delete the post or ban them or something. And they're like, you don't like my opinion. I'm like, no, I thought your opinion was valid, but you can't do it in a way you're attacking everybody. And I think sometimes, hey, I feel Lincoln Riley isn't a good head coach. So how I'm going to convey this is I'm going to compare him to Clay Helton and say Clay Helton's better. And then you're kind of losing the art. Like, no, like watch what, no way. That's just not possible. You can be critical of Lincoln Riley and the way he's managed the team, the way, whatever it is. But I think they try to push it to another, and then you say like, oh, well, I want a running quarterback. Moss isn't one, so replace him. I don't know anything else about it. I just know he's not as big of a runner as this other guy. I don't know anything about the other guy. I just know he's a better runner. So that kind of stuff is crazy. But, we're seeing it a lot. And if you don't lose games, you're probably not getting this kind of reaction. You'll get some. There's always going to be some kind of crazy reaction, but not like this.
When Riley has had all-star teams at Oklahoma, he'd never lost more than 2 games in a season. And if you gave him Oregon's roster or Ohio State's roster, I think they'd be damn good. I don't think it's this guy doesn't know what he's doing as a coach. I just think in some instances this year, the talent, which I'm not going to toot my own horn too much. I try not to, but what did I say all offseason? I don't know about the offensive line. I don't know about the defensive line. And now in the 3 losses, there are glaring issues on both of those areas on this team, and you're 3-3. If they just had a little bit more talent there, they're better. And yes, you could point to the clock management, and the coaching hasn't been perfect. No, it hardly ever is. But my whole point, this guy in the NIL era has not done a good enough job at adapting to what you need to do to get the best players on your roster. And if USC had the best players on their roster, which is USC, it's one of the few schools in the country where that's a possibility. You can get the top players, then they'd be in a much better spot. And he's the guy you want coaching those top players. His problem, they just haven't recruited well enough. And that's sort of been the story from him here with the jump. They had that great 2023 class, but not a lot of defensive talent there. 2024 wasn't what people wanted. And then to make matters worse, after losing to Penn State, their top defensive lineman in that 2026 class, a guy who had just committed to them about a month ago from Utah, Mawala, he flips to Oregon. And Oregon, we all know, has been kicking USC's butt getting those trench players who the Trojans need. So that, like, yes, you lost to Penn State and you're out of the college football playoff race for now. If they win out, we'll see. But, like, losing a defensive interior recruit, like, you gotta make some changes there. You need those players. You need better players to compete where USC wants to compete at. And to me, that has been the big issue the whole way this season. Yes, we're so close, 2 or 3 plays away. Eventually, when you're 2 or 3 plays away in 3 games and you're 3-3, I don't look at the coaching. I look at the talent. And if you had a little bit more talent, you'd probably make 1 or 2 of those plays. You're 5-1, maybe you're 4-2, but you're not 3-3.
No, I agree with you there.
I went on a little Ryan rant there.
I love the rants. That's good. I'll just sit back and listen.
And my voice gets all high.
I saw you retweeted this story. It was someone from The Athletic,
yes,
I believe, about a Penn State fan. So I didn't even know this was a thing. But if you want to pay to run out of the tunnel with the team, you can do that. And I think it was $1,800 or something. And a guy and his wife, I think he's from Northern California, big Penn State fan, like dressed in their Penn State gear, and I guess didn't hide it, and paid to run out of the tunnel with the team in their Penn State gear, and did that. And there's video and everything of it. You can check it out on social media. Sorry, I didn't put it up here. I thought that was kind of bizarre. I'm guessing they're not going to allow that anymore just because there's probably going to be some blowback from this. But I don't know. Any thoughts on that? It just seems a weird one to me.
It definitely was bizarre. And, yeah, to fill in people more, like, USC, it costs a couple grand, or he paid either $1,300 or $1,800.
Yeah.
There's money you can pay to run out with the team, and I don't really blame USC for thinking, oh, only USC fans want to do this. But college football is crazy, and so you get a Penn State fan who sees this online somewhere. He's like, I'm rich. I can afford that. That's kind of a cool experience. I'll put it on Instagram Live. I think they were kind of caught off guard that a non-USC person would want to do this, and now it's this big story where, yeah, you don't want to have a rival fan running out with your team. That's not a good look. So I don't know how they vet that, because someone wants to pay the money, they can just lie and say, yeah, I'm a USC fan, and then, maybe if they're in Penn State
put it subject to if you're dressed in any,
But, yeah, maybe the best thing is to just get rid of the promotion, because, if you get 10 people running out every week, that's 10 grand. How many home games do they have? Like 6, so, like, that's 60 grand. It's USC.
Yeah.
A kid's paying tuition, freaking 60 grand a year. I don't know if you need the 60 grand that bad. So I maybe that was just an idea by the marketing team that kind of went wrong. I credit, hey, you got to make money. So I credit them for trying, but I don't know if that's maybe the best course of action. I think that's a funny story. I don't like, oh, USC, what were they doing? I don't look at it like that. I just think it's kind of a funny thing.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. So I'm curious to see what happens going forward there. We had a comment from Matthew. Quick side note. Connor, were you at the basketball scrimmage?
Yes, I was. I thought they looked great in the second half. Do you want me to do 2 minutes?
Yeah, give me 2 minutes on it.
Sure. I wrote a takeaways piece, so I can just reference that from our site. If you want to check it out too, you can. St. Thomas looked great. He was 7 of 8 shooting, 21 points, got to the free throw line a bunch. He didn't play for like 13 minutes in the first half because he picked up 2 fouls. He looked like the star of the team, which is good because when I watched their open practice a couple weeks ago, I thought Desmond Claude looked like that star, that alpha for them, and he had a little bit of an off shooting night, but still got to the free throw line. I think he made 8 of 9 free throws, and he had a good night despite his shot not falling. So those 2 guys clearly look like the alphas. It was good that they were able to be alphas against an undermanned UTSA team. I think right now Musselman has 9 guys he could rely on in Big Ten play, which is encouraging. And after the game, I asked him about that. He said, well, roles are going to change, and what we have right now isn't necessarily what it's going to look like going forward. But to me, 9 players really stood out to me as guys who could play in the Big Ten. For USC, if the shots are falling, they're going to be hard to beat. And that sounds funny because that's obviously in basketball, you need the shots to be falling. But there are going to be some nights where it's going to be a tractor pull and they're going to lose games because they just don't have enough offense. St. Thomas and Claude are really the only guys who can create their own shots. But if they're out of foul trouble, they're playing well, they can facilitate. I do think this team can be a mid-level Big Ten team who can threaten to make the NCAA tournament. A lot needs to go right. They got to stay healthy, but I like the group. I like that they're old. Thomas, to me, is better than I thought, and Desmond Claude has been really good too. So I like the makeup of them. I think they could threaten a team on any given night, but I also think they could lose on any given night because the offensive consistency might not be there. All things considered, though, we're gonna have a basketball season, and I think that's a good thing, of course.
I agree with you there. We're gonna do some questions and stuff.
Yes.
We'll take a break a second. But we have some people in the chat talking about Lincoln Riley doesn't run the football. He didn't run it at Oklahoma. I believe he had, as a head coach, 3 different 1,000-yard rushers while he was at Oklahoma. Maybe Kennedy Brooks, Samaje Perine.
Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah, the Patriots running back. Joe Mixon, he was there. So, I mean, he's had some guys that were, I mean, he ran the football at Oklahoma. I don't know what, like, people say he doesn't run the football. Like, he had a bunch of 1,000-yard rushers when he was at Oklahoma.
And this is not, I stood up for Miller Moss earlier. I understand why Riley, gets all the crap he does for not running the ball enough when Woody Marks was having a great game. And even in the second half, as much as the run wasn't as effective in that half as the first half, USC was still picking up yards. The bottom line is this: if Miller Moss just executes the throw to Deuce Robinson, USC has a chance at a walk-off field goal. Where the way that second half was going, when Penn State takes the lead, I think everyone in the stadium who's a USC fan would take that, an opportunity to win the game in regulation on Michael Lance's leg after he had some success. So, yes, they probably could have run the ball more, but I didn't feel like Riley failed at putting his team in a position to win. I thought he did, and the team just didn't execute.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and answer your questions. All righty. We're back here on the Peristyle Podcast. We got a bunch of voicemails and we got some emails to get to. Let's start with one of the voicemails.
Hello, Ryan. I haven't called for probably 6 months because I felt the last time I called you were soft on Hilton, and we're giving excuses as to why things were what they were. He's been a coach 12, 13, 14 years. Oklahoma, same thing. We only need an offense. We don't need a defense. Then we get a defense, but we don't have an offense. And then you don't need special teams. A true head coach is going to have all 3 sides of the ball. Lincoln Riley's not that guy. Never has been, never will be. $12 million per year. We're in year 3. That's $36 million. We, in terms of the future, don't have the recruits. Not just this year, it's going forward. He can't even recruit. Terrible. Terrible. You've been too soft on him.
Hey, I'm hammering him for the lack of recruiting.
Yeah.
I've done it all off season, so don't look at me with that. But to say like he doesn't care about defense, I mean, he went out of his way. It was a year too late, but it's not like Alex Rinch is still here. It's not like Brian Odom's still here. He went out of his way to bring in a really good defensive staff. And when the team's run out of gas at the end of these last 2 games, has it been coaching that's the problem? No, it's injuries, and they just haven't had the roster. And when I went off at USC fans earlier for not really diagnosing the problem, like, to me, it's just been an obvious problem. Like, to compete in the Big Ten and to compete for college football playoff berths, like, you need a great offensive line, and you need a really strong pass rush and a really good defensive line. And USC doesn't have any of those things, and they didn't going into the game. Against LSU, a lot went right, and they got it done. But those issues were still there, and now they're 3-3. So I totally agree with the caller about his lack of recruiting. He's making a lot of money. USC, yes, they got burned by Barry Alexander, but, like, look at teams who recruit the transfer portal and who have done NIL correctly. Like, Oregon is in a great position. Ohio State, they just lost to Oregon, but they're in a great position. Texas is in a great position. Tennessee, those are sort of those blue blood NIL programs. They're, when history, in the future when we're talking about who got NIL right first, it's those teams, and they're all having great years this season. Like, the fact that USC, I'm not here to crap on their NIL, but, like, you just need to get the best players possible in here to compete at the highest level, and I don't think anyone thinks Lincoln Riley's done that. To me, that's where I criticize him. I don't criticize him as much for some of that other stuff. Yeah,
no, I agree with you there. I get, like, callers not happy with Lincoln Riley, but then you're just like, he's the worst coach ever, and I was like, no. It's understandable. Like, there's certainly been some shortcomings, but people say, oh, he doesn't run the ball. Well, he's had a lot of good. I mean, Woody Marks is on pace to have 1,000 yards. He's had several of them when he was at Oklahoma. It's just, I don't know. Like, people just want to, like, he certainly took the defense seriously this offseason. I mean, they couldn't have made better moves on the defensive side of the ball as far as staff goes. But I agree with you. I think the biggest issue right now is the personnel side. And the game had changed since he's come to USC. And USC typically has been kind of slow to adapt. And I'm not just putting that all on the administration or on Riley. I think everyone has some blame going around there. But some teams adapted to this new world order quicker. And USC's been slow typically. And I think Lincoln Riley has been personally slow. And maybe it's just because he was at USC. I don't know. But that's where I would have the biggest criticism. Like you said, John in Oakland wrote in, hey, Ryan, Connor, and Peristyle Podcast team. Given the depressing state of USC football as it hits the midseason mark, I have the following hypothetical questions. If you, Ryan, Connor, and Chris were suddenly made co-athletic directors at USC, what would you realistically do to get the football program back to elite status and winning in the Big Ten? Is it even possible in this age of top recruits just wanting big NIL payouts and high visibility playing time, plus programs like Oregon that enjoy well-known locations / financial advantages and skirting the rules, for a legacy program such as USC to have success? Fight on, John in Oakland.
I would do what USC's doing, which is in the process of trying to bring in a big-time general manager to manage the USC roster. To me, like, you have the coaches in place. As much as people can debate that, I feel like they have the coaches in place to win at the highest level. What's lacking, it's the roster. So I think Jen Cohen, she's really trying hard to get a general manager in. But Riley, like I said to start the show, sometimes it's his way or the highway. And I feel like he needs to make an adjustment here. And I hope that this season, in some ways, like the shortcomings of
like
this
a wake-up
season
call.
Are a wake-up call to him, because you can't really just rely on culture like they've talked about. And you can't just go in the offseason and gain all this weight and expect that's just going to solve all of your problems. You need to have the best players possible. And he's talked so much about development, and that's fine. But can you bring in some 5-star guys who start here instead of here? That, you can, it's a lot easier to develop those really good players. So if I was in charge, I would say, look, here's our NIL kitty. Stars, like, you got to vet these kids. We don't just want to throw money stupidly, but I would come up with a plan. Like, who are the blue chip guys that you want the most? And let's put together a financial package. Let's make sure we go get these guys. Let's compete with the big dogs. Let's get the best players possible who we trust. And it's a gamble with Barry Alexander. Nothing's going to be perfect, but let's get the best players in here that we possibly can. Let's get the money together to do that. I think that's where it's sort of starts and finishes. Not every recruitment is an NIL recruitment, but for those blue chip top guys, as more time goes on, they're going to see what guys in the grade above them get, and that's not going to change. As time goes on, more and more guys are going to want to be paid, and I think USC, sounds weird to say let's go pay high school recruits to commit to USC, but I think that's kind of the way the game is right now.
You have to, and you need the general manager, so that would be, and they're working on doing that. I brought this up on Tunnel Vision. And it's funny, the opposite happened. USC had a 5-star commit from 2026, and Oregon takes them. I think you go for 2025 and just pick some West Coast linemen that's going to get a crap ton of money from Oregon and just overpay for them. Like, blow your budget out, just do it, just to get a win, just to go out there and say, hey, we're not just going to sit here and let Oregon and Phil Knight pay for every player that they want to get. We're going to go and overpay and try to bring a guy like that in. So that was the move I would like to
make matters worse, too, the kid flips, and then Oregon also gets a commitment from that great modern day 2026 defensive lineman, too. So it was like Oregon gets that great modern day defensive lineman to commit. So, it was a real double whammy here this week. Those are guys USC needs.
Yeah. Was it Jed Fish that made the comment, he was about the Oregon State game. Oregon, Ohio State game, excuse me. He's saying that was a pair of $20 million rosters. That's what that looks like. It's just what it takes, All right, let's go to a voicemail.
Hi, this is Richard from La Crescenta. I've never called in before, but just want to say I was really mad after that Penn State game. I was really upset with how it just seemed like everything went wrong. And same with the Minnesota. But I want to make something clear. I'm angry right now. But anyone who says that Clay Helton was better is an idiot. Because when Helton was around, I wouldn't get angry at losses. I just wouldn't care. And you know what? At least when I'm angry, it means I care. And that's the important thing. Now for a quick question. A while ago, you guys were kind of smiling about getting a new GM, like maybe Courtney Morgan from Alabama, and then he ended up just getting a pay raise. Has there been any updates on the new GM front? Thank you.
That was a very fitting voicemail.
I love that
timing.
Call.
Yeah, great. Yeah. And I mean, that's a great call too, because I don't think USC is going to go 4-8 this season, and I really hope they don't. But that was Clay Helton at the end. You know what I mean? Jeez. Anyway, on the GM, yes, some stuff. Nothing that we can say on the show. I think they're going through their due diligence right now. They're trying to get someone in. I just it. I don't want to say too much, Ryan, but it seems like it's a real Jen Cohen initiative, and I wonder how that plays with Riley, where he wants to do things his way. A big reason why Courtney Morgan isn't here is because he didn't like Lincoln Riley's recruiting strategy. He felt like USC needed to do a better job of going after the top guys in California, not just the guys they wanted. They needed to be doing a better job of going after everyone and really just making California your home base and putting that fence around California. And he ends up staying at Alabama. He got the pay raise, but it didn't seem like Riley was really ready to change his strategy when the negotiations were happening with Morgan. And maybe now you're 3-3. Does he start to change a little bit? I just don't know how good of a mesh there is if this is a Jen Cohen initiative and not a Lincoln Riley initiative.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. It's important. And remember, next year, the athletic department will be paying players directly. So up to $22 million out of their budget is going to go that. So there's still going to be money going around. And I think it just means the Oregons and Ohio States are going to pay way more than that too. But that's going to be something to watch for also. But money's a big part of this. And USC has to get better at spending it the right way, getting these players, because you just got to figure out a way. You have enough tradition, you have all the other stuff. You just need to pay the money and get the guys in. International question from Andy in Calgary. Ryan, I know you don't like long email questions, so please kindly condense this if you can. First of all, I'm not going to condense your emails. You condense it for when you send it to me. I'll just read the emails, but that's asking me to do more work. I don't want to do more work. We do plenty of work around here. But anyway, got Andy. First off, I understand that there are endless factors that go into winning football games. I wanted to make that clear. I do understand that. But having said that, specifically Lincoln Riley's timeout and clock management, just in general over his 3 years here, have been pretty consistently awful. So I saw a graphic yesterday showing Riley's 3-year record at Oklahoma, an impressive 33-11 versus 3-year record at USC. My question is, how on earth did he get to 33-11, assuming his timeout and clock management was as crappy at Oklahoma as it's been at USC? Not sure if that's a question right now. Lots going on in the middle of the season, but thought it would be an interesting graphic. Thought it was an interesting graphic. Thanks and fight on, Andy.
By the way, most coaches him some wins there. 33-11. Riley was way better than.
Yeah, that was not his record there. He lost no more than 2 games a season, so that would be impossible. By the way, most coaches suck at time management. It's not like a Lincoln Riley thing. Like, all coaches make mistakes like that, you know.
And the time, like, Riley was deathly afraid of giving Penn State the ball back, which, in my opinion, as he should have. Penn State shredded the USC defense the previous drive to score that game-tying touchdown. They got 2 fourth down. Like, that was sort of a pass-fail. You either make that play, and Riley maybe will believe in the defense, or you don't. And he didn't want to give them any time left because he was afraid of Warren and afraid of their explosive plays. So, yes, his time management was poor, and people think his time management was poor. I have a hard time getting there when they had an opportunity, if they just execute on a play that they should have executed on to kick a walk-off field goal. And that's what I said on Instant Analysis. I rewatched the game Monday. That's what I still believe now. Could it have maybe been a little bit better if you use a timeout? Yes, but I get the rationale for not. He was afraid, because they weren't in the field goal range yet, of giving Penn State the ball back, and I don't really fault them for that. When the previous drive, they marched down the field to score the game-tying touchdown.
Yeah. Fatbank says Riley was 55-10 from 2017 to 2020.
And he played in an easier league, and he had better rosters, so that helped.
That's
now
part
they're
of
in
it.
a harder league, and their roster isn't as good. But they can be doing some different things to get a better roster, and they should do a lot of those things, as we've discussed a lot on the show.
All right. Let's go to another voicemail.
Hey, Ryan. You guys do an amazing job. You're the best team covering SC football. Like everybody else, I'm completely upset, so please bear with me. The thing about this is, great teams, they figure out a way to win. Well, USC figures out a way to lose. And I watched Lincoln Riley, and he talks about how we battle and how close we are, but 3-3 isn't close. Miller Moss is a great Trojan, but his inability to run and his weak arm have been major reasons that USC has lost the 3 games. It's such a disadvantage in college football when the defense knows the quarterback is not going to run. So many times our running backs get the ball when the D lineman is on their back, and Moss still doesn't take it out and run. Any athletic quarterback could keep the ball and run easily to the outside for first downs. Maiev has already shown that when given the chance. All this being said, what makes me most disappointed is that USC's failures are directly related to the poor recruiting over the past few years. Think of every offensive and defensive line prospect that USC wanted and how many of them chose other schools, especially Oregon. Our players on the offensive and defensive lines aren't good enough. We leave ourselves very little margin for error, and if you're in a close game every week, you're going to lose some of those. USC fans, administrators, coaches whine about NIL and how Oregon has an unfair advantage. They sound just like the teams that used to whine when Pete Carroll was ruling college football. If our NIL programs aren't as good, that's our fault. One last note to leave you with. Lincoln Riley is not proving to be the offensive guru that we all anoint him. He's good, don't get me wrong, but doesn't it seem like our offense mainly consists of throwing balls up to our tall receivers and hoping they win the one-on-one battles? We beat LSU because of 2 unbelievable catches by Kyron. Our most explosive player on offense, Branch, has regressed, and the only way we can get him the ball is with bubble screens that immediately get blown up. It doesn't sound like a genius to me. So thanks again for letting me vent. You guys are the best team covering SC, and we all appreciate you guys.
Great call.
Yeah, thanks for the call.
A lot on the bone there. On the Miller stuff, I wonder, Ryan, if Riley acknowledged that he wanted Miller to run more, and then he did against Wisconsin, and then he got a close to, or maybe he did get a concussion in that game, and now it's like, okay, maybe he's not quite ready to run.
Yeah.
Because he did have a couple nice naked bootleg plays, and I agree. He's not a total stiff. He can, if there's an option for him to like roll out after a fake handoff and get 10 yards, I think he's athletic enough to do it. Maybe this offensive line hasn't been good enough to let him run, and that's everyone who wants Maiev. That's what they say. So I don't want to make a point to them, but I understand. Like I say I don't understand when fans vent about it. Like I understand like the lack of running. Of course I get that. I still don't understand why, because of that, Moss needs to go. But he could run more, and I just wonder if that Wisconsin game was a reason that kind of made Riley a little bit fearful, and he didn't want him to run against Penn State. So maybe we'll see him run a little bit more now that the schedule softens up a little bit. And I do think that could help the USC offense a lot. He's not a total stiff there in the middle. He can move around. And then there was a million other things, but if you want to answer to some of that Miller Moss stuff, I can let you go.
No, go ahead. That's
it's everything we've touched on. The recruiting, we all totally agree with that. And then Riley is an offensive genius. He recruited a good group of wide receivers this year, and for whatever reason, Zachariah Branch hasn't taken that step forward, and they've just been really inconsistent. I thought that this receiver group would be a lot better. I thought it would be the strength of the team this season.
Yeah.
And to not have a guy over 300 yards 6 games in, I mean, is that on Riley as a coach? A little bit. But have they just maybe had some missed evaluations? I sort of kind of lean that way a little bit more. I always go back to if the offense or if the NFL draft started tomorrow and you could draft anyone, I don't think USC would have a single receiver tight end taken. And at USC, that's not acceptable. So is that on the coaches for not scheming it up? I just don't think the talent is there as people thought it would be.
Yeah. And his sort of comment Lincoln Riley is okay at offense, I guess. It's like Connor already said he had 5 starting quarterbacks in the NFL this past weekend. 5. He's only been head coach for 8 years? It's crazy what he's been able to do. So yes.
You give him a great offensive line and all these great skill position guys like he had at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
You'll see the results. It all comes back to the roster construction for me.
Yeah, which I think that's completely fair criticisms. What's going? He did take over a dumpster fire, but it's year 3. It's year 3, so there should be better people in place, and maybe especially on the offensive line, there's shortcomings there that you don't want to see in year 3.
We are seeing the shortcomings of them not getting up to speed with NIL playing out in real time.
Yes.
And that, I think, has to be the most frustrating thing if you're a USC fan.
Yeah, and that's not all on Riley, but it's part on him too. But it's just the administration, especially when Mike Bohn was there, they were not all in on that kind of stuff. It was nowhere near what Oregon and Tennessee and Texas and Ohio State. Even Ohio State, I think, was slower. Alabama was slower. They've picked it up. Ohio State was, and they went all in this last offseason and just got everybody they wanted. Pretty crazy. We got a text message. It says, question for Ryan and crew. With the offense failing to score on game-winning drives in all 3 losses and Lincoln Riley's failure to get the ball to the best weapons in an effective way, is it time to hire an offensive coordinator, someone who is solely focused on crafting the plays? Penn State's OC just outcoached Lincoln Riley. So did Minnesota's.
I just don't think Riley would ever give up the play calling power. But last year this came up, and I think he said, "I'll do what I think is best." But I have a hard time thinking that he would think that what's best is him giving up the play calling duties. So I don't foresee that happening. What people conveniently leave out in all those games is 4th and goal at the 1-inch line against or at the 1.5 yard line against Michigan, can't get off the field. 4th and goal at the 1/2-inch line against Minnesota. Maybe he did get off the field, but they call it a touchdown. Against Penn State, the 2 4th down plays. If you just make one of those 4th down plays, you win the game. They're 0 for 4. So yes, the offense had a chance at the end of all these games, but the defense had better chances to win, and people always conveniently leave that part out of it. Riley's this great offensive coach. He should bail us out. How about the defense gets one of the stops there? That to me is the bigger issue, because they had clear-cut 4 chances in 3 games. 0 for 4.
Yeah, I think Jack pointed out on Tunnel Vision that in the 3 losses, opponents are 7 for 7 on 4th downs.
Not going to cut it.
That's not good enough. In the chat, DBid1, having a whole extra year to gain more size and muscle is really the winning factor for Gentry. Obviously very skilled and athletic, but we'll need to bulk up more to make it for the next level. I guess there's a question there. He was amazing the way he was this year.
He's if he didn't gain another pound, he'd be an NFL draft pick. If he was healthy, he would have been an NFL draft pick after this season. So would it help him to gain some weight? Sure, but he was producing and playing high level football without that added weight. And if he goes to the next level, what's the trend in the league right now? You want faster defensive players because the league it's become more skill, it's become more speed. The era of Ray Lewis would maybe be a defensive end right now if he played instead of a linebacker. Like
right.
It just things have gotten a little smaller. So I think that even though he is on the small side, that would play into his hand. And I heard someone in the press box who was talking to a scout at the Minnesota game, and the scout said, no, he could play in the NFL at that size. So I think that's another misconception with fans where they think he needs to bulk up, and it would help him to prevent injuries, but he doesn't need to bulk up to perform at the next level. If he just didn't get hurt, he'd be a prospect for sure.
We got Peps. Is it safe to say that the current 3-3 record is not causing any player locker room issues?
That's a great question, and
it is a great question.
We have no idea on that. Jalen Smith on Trojans Live said the vibes in the locker room are a little bit all over the place. That was his quote, which I understand after losing. But, I mean, and Miller Moss doesn't seem very happy right now, and I understand that too. So I hope there aren't any locker room issues, but it's possible, like any team that's struggling.
No, it's for sure. And you want to see them be able to bounce back and getting a win on the road here. If they lose this game, it's going to be tough.
Then there were some issues.
Yeah, because, there's a process that you're following, and if you feel like you're following the process and getting good results, it makes sense. And if you're not, how long are you going to follow that process anymore? You got to win games.
Not to be dramatic, but a loss to a bad Maryland team, even though it's on the road, that's a reevaluate everything.
That I would agree with you there. All right, we got one more. Landman doesn't seem very happy. Y'all sound effing crazy saying it's the receivers. Moss isn't the quarterback that will best run this offense. Oh, my God, we're back with that again. There are hundreds of teams that would love to have this wide receiver core. Moss can't get the ball downfield. Okay.
I'd love to have this guy send me screenshots of these receivers being so wide open and Moss just missing them. I don't know. I don't know how you could possibly defend the receivers with the way the season's gone.
And there's people that don't want Moss. And it's just so we're going to make up all this stuff. He's had, I thought he was really good. Remember maybe the LSU touchdown where LSU jumps off sides and he throws that.
Yeah, the ball to Lane.
Yeah, perfect ball to Jacoby Lane. I get it. You hate Moss. He is not the problem. I'm sorry. We've gone over this a zillion times. Watch Zachariah. I mean, I love Zachariah Branch. I don't know what's going on with him, and I could put a bunch of the blame on the coaching for that. But when the ball's thrown to him, there's somebody on him all the time. He's never wide open, and that's a problem. Moss has put it in some windows and stuff, and you need better separation from these guys. I think it's good that we've seen a different. Mekhi Lemon was this last game. We've seen Jacoby Lane games. We've seen Deuce Robinson games. We've seen Kyron Hudson, but there hasn't been a consistent guy that's always open that you can rely on as a quarterback. So. Maybe there's hundreds of teams that would be lined up as a receiver corps, but they're playing for some middle school. They would love to have them. No, I'm just saying. But we love this group, but they're not getting the kind of separation. And I'm not saying it's all on them. Maybe it's the coaches. Maybe their development. They're not scheming. Whatever it is. But I'm not putting this on Moss.
Some of it's probably on Moss, but
yes, there's some blame to go around. But if it's all on Moss, it's no, that's not the.
Has anyone on this receiving corps come close to being a Taj Washington or a Brendan Rice? No, you miss those guys terribly. You miss Caleb Williams too, of course. But I mean, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I feel like if you have those two receivers. I think even Caleb Williams would have a hard time with this offense, the way it's set up. That's kind of the point I'm getting at. Would it be better with him? Of course. Look what he's doing in the
ridiculous.
NFL. He's a ridiculous player. He can run. He stresses the defense in so many ways. But I think he would have a hard time sometimes getting the ball to these receivers. And last year, I mean, how many times was Brendan Rice freaking wide open? I just go back to that Colorado game and Taj Washington, guys were wide open. They did a really nice job of being able to get open, and we just haven't seen that this year with these receivers.
Justin says, I didn't think our receivers were getting separation, but I could be wrong.
We're not able to watch the all-22, so.
Yeah, Cam Life says, guys, the receivers aren't getting separation. Yeah. A lot of times the TV advantage point is not the version to see. The wide shots showcasing the receivers, they are not getting separation.
And here's something else, too. The defenses this year are freaking night and day better than last year. Minnesota's defense is a good defense, and Penn State's defense clearly is a really good defense. LSU's defense wasn't, they're fine, but the Big Ten defenses that I warned people about in the offseason. I said Minnesota might be tough. Penn State going to be tough. Michigan's defense. Before tunnel vision, I kind of didn't think Michigan was as good, so I can't maybe take a victory lap for them. But we're seeing these defenses are a lot different than last year, too, and that I think gets lost in the wash a little bit, too. That's a big, big factor here as well.
Yeah, we'll end it on this one from Roger. Losing means make a change at quarterback since the beginning of football, right or wrong? I think that's fair. We've seen that could happen. If they keep losing, and even if Lincoln Riley thinks Miller Moss is a better quarterback, they might have to make a change just because that's just the way it goes.
It's usually either the coach or the quarterback, right?
Yeah, and the coach ain't going anywhere. So, all right. Well, good stuff. Thanks, everyone, for hanging with us here. If you're live on YouTube, hopefully we got to put your comments up on the screen. And thanks, everyone that sent in emails and text messages and voicemail. We got a lot of voicemails, all that stuff. People care. There's not the apathy level that, that one voicemail was great.
Yeah. All the voicemails today were great.
Yeah, there was a lot of good stuff there. So, but thanks to everyone for tuning in. Hope you guys all enjoyed the show. Don't forget, if you're going to be in the DMV for the game this weekend, Friday night we will be having our meetup at Tom's Watch Bar in what was it? What was it called? National Harbor. That's where it is. Tom's Watch Bar, National Harbor, 6:30 on Friday night. So hope you guys all enjoyed the show, and we will talk to you next time. All right.
All right. That's a show. That's a talk show right there.
Yeah,